To get started with AWS Amplify, go to aws.amazon.com/pm/amplify and click on Build an App. Make sure that you're in the region of your choice and go ahead and create your app. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to create a real estate app. Click on Confirm Deployment. This will go ahead and set up Amplify Studio. Once your app has been deployed, you can go into the AWS console and you can click on Launch Studio. This will go ahead and launch Amplify Studio, which is a visual development environment to manage your backend resources and also connect your front-end components. You can go ahead and create a new data model. For the purposes of this demonstration, I already have a data model that has been built and deployed. I'm going to click on View Data Model. And because this is a real estate app, typically you would have a community model and a listing model. Listing is the individual homes that would be listed within a real estate company. And it would have fields such as plan, price, status, whether it's available or under construction, and the dimensions with an address and other fields that are relevant. The community would be typically similar, but it would be a conglomeration of multiple listings. So it would have something like name, location, status, price point, and a contact person. Now you can build these relationships using the visual editor, and you can add a relationship between the community and listing. For example, one community will have multiple listings. And typically, as the real estate company grows, you will have multiple communities. Once I click on Save and deploy this data model, it will go ahead and deploy the GraphQL schema. Note that this schema has been built automatically by Amplify. You don't have to do anything if you're using the visual editor. Once you click on Save and Deploy, this will go ahead and deploy a GraphQL API. The GraphQL API is powered and managed by AWS AppSync. And this will allow access to data from different data sources using multiple resolvers. The data sources are backed by Amazon DynamoDB tables. And you can see multiple tables that has been created for the models that has been defined earlier. Going back to Amplify Studio, you also have multiple different categories for authentication, for storage, functions, interactions, predictions. You also have a section called the UI library, which is used to define your front-end components if you're building an app with React. As a part of your hackathon, your application can be full-stack web, mobile, or cross-platform. If you're building a React app, you can actually go ahead and define your front-end components through a Figma file. And this Figma file has already been defined, so I will go ahead and log into Figma in order to show what changes have been made. If you're getting started for the first time, we have a default template from Figma where you can get started with, and that default template will redirect you to the Figma login, and you can actually see the components that has been pre-built by Amplify UI. For the purpose of the real estate app demonstration, I've made some changes to the standard card. For example, I have added the address, I've also added the price point and a status indicator, whether it's available or whether it's under construction. And once you do sync with Figma, you get all the components into Amplify Studio, and you can go ahead and configure the components individually to go ahead and bind it to the data. For example, for my standard card, I have mapped it to the listing type and model that was created earlier in the data model section. And for the prop value of source image, I mapped it to the listing card.image. For this particular content, I'm actually getting from the data manager where I have created seed data in here with specific plans, prices, status, dimensions, community. If you go back to the UI library, you can also go ahead and create forms. You can create collections of this particular data. You can also shuffle preview data, and you can explore multiple different features of Amplify Studio in order to build your app. In the event that you do want to create this app and build this app locally, you can go to Get Component Code, and you will have the code to use this component locally. You can also click on Initial Project Setup to see what are the prerequisites to make sure that your project is successfully deployed locally. You need to go ahead and install the AWS Amplify CLI, and you need to go ahead and install the AWS Amplify JavaScript library and the UI React library. Once you do that, you'd have to initialize Amplify and configure Amplify, and then run an Amplify pull. That is going to pull your upstream code into your local environment, and you should be able to test this locally. In order to learn more about the backend data and AWS AppSync, you can actually go into the AWS AppSync documentation to see how it works behind the scenes. All of this is accomplished by AWS Amplify, and it deploys the API. In order to understand more about authentication, you can actually go into the AWS Amplify documentation, and you can take a look at the authentication category and understand how you can use the AWS Amplify JavaScript library and the auth category to access the necessary resources. Our documentation also provides you a quick insight into how you can deploy your applications using Amplify CLI. And if your entry point has been through Amplify Studio, this would be the section of the documentation where you can go ahead and use multiple different components and features of Studio. Now, if you're targeting the bonus section, you can also go into sections such as in-app messaging and get started with in-app messaging for your web application or your mobile application. In order to quickly get started with Amplify Studio and a full stack React application, we also have a Learn site that takes you through a Learn course. And this would be for beginners in order to create a data model, import Figma designs into Amplify Studio, and connect the data models to the UI components and create a collection view. You can also take a look at the owner-based authorization rules in order to build an enhanced and a robust data model. If you'd like to check out a video about a quiz app using Amplify Studio and AppSync in under 20 minutes, this would be a great place to get started. If you'd like to build with AWS Amplify and AppSync using CDK, this would be a great resource to get started with. And it has a series of blog posts that deploy AWS AppSync applications via CDK. If you want to look at a cross-platform app via Flutter, then you can build a Flutter mobile application using AWS Amplify, where this is an end-to-end tutorial to create a trip planner app for iOS and Android platforms. And finally, if you're stuck at any point during the hackathon, you can always join the AWS Amplify Discord server, which is a community-driven server, along with staff members within the server. And once you join the Discord server, you should be able to go into the Amplify help channel or the dedicated hackathon channel in order to learn more about what the other community members are building or showcase your application or get help from the community and staff members.